Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and in life and simplify them. And friends, today I want to talk about leadership. Specifically, maybe a buzzword that you've heard once or twice thrown around, or maybe even read in articles online or otherwise, is how to be a conscious leader, especially now, post-pandemic, let's hope, and looking to really refine how we run our businesses, how we influence people, and how we are a leader in not only our work life, but our life in communities, neighborhoods, and beyond. So I had to get the right guest to really simplify this topic down. And I think, my friends, I've found her. Her name is Karen Wilhelm Buckley, and she is committed to cultivating conscious awareness in leadership, partnering with leaders and their organizations over many years as they develop wise leadership. Now, what is wise leadership? That's the skills, strategies, and presence to cultivate committed performance and effectively drive change. She's got 4 decades of experience, and her passion has been developing and designing focused dialogue that results in meaningful action. Karen has worked internationally, bringing together leaders who are effectively working towards a sustainable, caring, and regenerative world. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Karen Wilhelm Buckley. Hey, Karen.
Hey, Mary. Thanks so much. I'm really glad to be here with you today.
Oh, I'm so pleased you are here as well. And if memory strikes me correct, I believe it is our mutual friend, Peter Russell, that had recommended you to me and to obviously our podcast.
Absolutely.
Which says a lot in my books. I mean, especially if you're thinking about conscious leading as a whole. So maybe where we should begin is, could you define what a conscious leader is and what it isn't?
Sure. So let's start with the word leadership. So a leader is very simply somebody who has the willingness and ability to act on that which matters the most to them. So the willingness and ability to go take gorgeous photographs, the willingness and ability to create a beautiful business that will help sustain your family, the willingness and ability to build a bigger and bigger business, if that's what it is that moves in your heart, where you find courage in your heart. So a leader is simply someone who has the willingness and ability to act on that which matters most to you. Now, there's a lot of leaders in the world that we might put in the not so conscious category. Leaders who create more negative reactions from the way they show up, or leaders who might get a lot done, but what they're getting done is not leading to a world that's going to work for us and our children for generations to come.
Right.
So a conscious leader takes into account the way they are, the way they show up, their state of being, and also what the purpose is that drives their action. So what is their purpose? How is that going to play out? And what is that going to look like as it ripples out?
It's a beautiful way to put it. And I guess I haven't really thought of it in that way. I mean, we've all had terrible bosses. And I think a lot of us have probably, said, never again. I'm never going to have a boss. I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to do it differently. I'm sure. Raise your hand if that's you listening out there in the world that have felt that way. So what do you think on the inverse is a unconscious leader? How would you describe them?
Well, let me say more about what a conscious leader is. So an unconscious leader, I'll say that much. An unconscious leader is unkind. An unconscious leader is unclear in their expectations.
Yes.
So you don't actually know how to win.
Right.
An unconscious leader does not keep agreements, is not accountable to their agreements. An unconscious leader is in it for themselves rather than for the broader purpose. A conscious leader is aware of the presence that they bring, and also aware that some days they're going to be on and some days they're going to be triggered.
Yes.
Because leaving a boss that didn't work and going and starting your own business, all of a sudden you turn around and look and you're the boss. And you've just blown up at somebody, or you've just missed a deadline, or you've just done one of those things that drove you nuts back in the old place. So conscious is also being aware of being human.
Yeah. And
You
what I hear in what you just said there really strikes me that it has a certain level of emotional intelligence is necessary to be a conscious leader, because when you have emotional intelligence, you have empathy and compassion and also grace, because we're all not robots. We can't just spit out program A to receive result B. We all have off days, right?
And we all have patterns that mindsets that get locked in early on in life, agreements we made with ourselves and the world that then drive our behavior and drive our results. And what happens is we replicate. From that mindset comes a replication cycle that we go through again and again and again. So the kind of authentic presence that we bring forward depends on what kind of internal agreements we've made. If I have a client that I was working with recently, her internal agreement that she made when she was 10 years old was, I'm not smart. So what she always does is try to prove how smart she is and assumes other people are putting her down. So she has this edge, right? She has this chip on her shoulder.
Yeah.
Another client has an agreement that she made with herself when she was young that she's not lovable. And so she holds back and she plays it shy and she retreats when actually she really wants to step forward and serve, really wants to step forward with a creative idea that she has. So when we can just identify those mindsets, we can begin to love them just as we would our child. We can hold them, we can rock them, we can love them. And then we can, as we begin to allow them to start to grow and recognize that in present time, those were conclusions we reached when we were quite young. They're probably not really very valid or true when we look at it from the light of day now. Then that begins to open a wider sense of presence in us, and our voice becomes more a sense of what matters, what lives in our heart, rather than what our reactions are, how we're trying to perform for the outer world.
It's so true. And it does break my heart when you hear stories like that, because it's like, when you were 8 or 10 or whenever, and you drop that deep anchor down in your belief system of I am this or I am not this, you're basing your current perception on life on your thought or reality of what you thought the world and how it worked when you were little, and you're just sorting things out, it's like imagining, I could never ride a unicycle because I've never, done it before. And so I could never possibly do it here in the future. Right.
Brilliant.
And it holds us back. And I'll be the first to admit, there are a couple of deep rooted anchors I dropped down many years ago that I'm working on now at age 44. And I'm sure there's probably more 20, 30 years from now I'll be working on too, right?
Absolutely. I'm in my 60s and I discovered something new recently. And I was like, oh, that's why I do that.
Yes.
And the thing the most important part is when we discover those deep anchors and we start pulling them up, don't turn it into a toxic sludge of self-judgment and beating yourself up. You did the best you knew.
Yeah. With what you had to work with.
Absolute best you knew how to do. It was your best way of coping. Yeah. And when we see kids, they're very earnest. It was your best way. So when you pull that anchor up, let the ocean start to flow free and recognize it was a decision you made long ago. You can make a new decision now.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
You have freedom.
Yeah. And I think one core desire for many humans, dare I say all humans, is a sense of freedom, and it's so interesting, and I can only speak for myself, the ways I limit myself and my freedom based on the stories that I hold as truth in my identity. And that's the interesting stuff. I think a lot of times leaders go so fast. We just jam pack our to-do lists and our calendars, and we remain so busy that we don't even have moment, an iota of a second to look at this stuff and stop the patterns of toxicity in the workplace or, our well-being going down the drain because of conscious and unconscious decisions that we make in the day.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And those stories, what we do is those stories arise from our default mindsets.
Yes.
And we have a choice to design our mindsets. And those default mindsets are often depletive. So they deplete our energy. They deplete our capacity to take action. They deplete our possibilities. Versus them being generative mindsets that actually strengthen us, give us confidence, give us the capacity to care for more people, bring forward an authentic voice because we're so excited. So you have this wonderful hashtag of do the thing.
Yes.
and I was thinking about this because I know how busy you are. I know how busy everyone listening is. I was a mom working full time. I'm still a mom. My grandson was here all weekend, so you might hear my cold because he was here.
Yes.
And the simplest way to become more conscious is to pause. To take that pause whenever you can, a couple times a day, and relax into trusting yourself. Because most of our errant behaviors, most of our unconsciousness comes when we've shut off the trust in our fundamental nature.
Yes.
And who you are, who I am. We're capable and we're caring and we know what we want to do. And if we don't know, we'll figure it out. So when we can pause and relax into trusting ourselves, what I say is, I trust myself in the here and now. In the here and now, right now, in this moment, I trust myself.
Yeah.
And I do that. If I'm in a wobbly spot, I do that every night as I go to sleep. And I do that every morning as I wake. And I set a timer on my phone and I do it a couple times a day. What that trust does is it allows me to center deeply in myself, and it brings forward a level of conscious awareness in my leadership.
You know what that reminds me of is, anytime you've ever sat through a meditation practice, and your thoughts always shift over, and you start thinking about, what am I going to make for dinner tonight? Oh, I haven't gotten this, and blah blah blah. It's that kind of nudging yourself lovingly back to center. It's like bringing yourself back to the present and to the now. In that, do you think there's also power in saying it out loud rather than just saying it in your mind?
Oh, certainly. I mean, you can use lots of creative ways to explore it and to get it out. You can dance it.
Yeah.
You can sing it. You can say it. You can talk to a good friend. You obviously want to choose who you talk with about it. When I first began to discover these mindsets, I filled an entire flip chart with a mind map of all the ways that mindset has served me in my life and all the ways that it has limited me.
Yeah.
And I worked on it for a couple weeks, and it was fantastic. It opened up such an appreciation for the gifts that mindset gave me, as well as that I could touch the sadness in all the ways that it held me back.
And I imagine in doing a mind map like that, we're all learners in different ways, visual learners, auditory, kinesthetic, all of that. So it's kind of leaving the breadcrumbs in your office, in your bathroom mirror, or otherwise, to help remind you to come back to the here and now and come back to who you are, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a Chinese proverb, which is tension is who you think you should be, and relaxation is who you are.
Yes, yes.
And that is what I put on my mirror for quite a while.
I love it. Well, your work seems to be really stemmed and centered into these three core principles of being a conscious leader, and that's authentic presence, cohesive intention, and resonant action. So I'd really like to break those down and really take a deep dive into each. So talk to me about developing your skills as a compassionate and decisive leader. You talk a lot about doing that in the visible and the invisible realms of business. What do you mean by that?
Well, the invisible, so let me say there's visible and less visible leaders. If you think about in every organization, there's people
Yes.
who don't necessarily beat their chest and stand up strong, but they're the people who you know you can count on to get things done.
Yeah.
All right. So we want to honor and trust that side of ourselves and those leaders in our own organization. They might be working behind the scenes. They might even be vendors. They might be customers that refer people. They might be less visible. They're not the people who say, hey, here I am. So that's one aspect, is to recognize that there are invisible or less visible aspects to leadership. The other is that you're working in the invisible realms, because when those default mindsets are running you, if the default mindset that's running you is I'm not safe, then on the left, it's not necessarily visible to people, but they can feel it.
Yeah.
You're communicating I'm not safe in 100 different ways, in how you act and what you insist upon, what you back away from. And so that opportunity to pause and step into love, just choose. Am I in this mindset, or can I step into love?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. It's that simple. Am I feeling unsafe? I heard an edge in my voice. Am I feeling unsafe? No, actually I am. Oh, I have a choice right now. I can step into love.
Yeah.
Because the part of me that feels unsafe is only this big. And the part of me that knows how to love is huge.
Yeah.
When we let her be huge, she is. Look at all the love we've already brought into the world in our lives. Look at all the ways.
And isn't it amazing? I mean, the last time you're in a boardroom or a conference room, whether with your team or pitching a client, when you show up with that kind of fear mindset or, I'm not safe kind of mentality, you can sense it in the room. It's like electric. It's dense in the air we breathe, and your shoulders are way up by your ears. Everybody's on edge, sitting on the edge of their chairs. I mean, it definitely ripples out in seen and unseen ways to people. And you may think you're hiding it, but you're not.
No,
right?
You're not. Because just as you said, you can feel it.
Yes.
Your body is more contracted.
Yes.
Your eyes are narrower. You actually, Barbara Fredrickson's work, she's at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, her remarkable work on positive emotions, has proven that when we emphasize positive emotions, when we choose to emphasize and amplify what's working and what's good, my colleague David Cooper, writer at Case Western Reserve University as well, has done some marvelous work on appreciative inquiry. When we spend our time discovering what works, and when we spend our time finding those positive emotions and amplifying them, Barbara Fredrickson says we then broaden and build. Our vision actually broadens. We can see, our peripheral vision gets wider. We can see more options for our company. We can see other solutions to sticky problems. And we have the capacity then to build from that foundation of confidence to take on whatever's next, to respond to the next challenge, to move forward. And Barbara says the key ratio is a 3-to-1 ratio. So it's 3 positive thoughts to 1 negative thought.
I love it.
Now, I don't know about you, but that's a challenge.
Yeah. Some days.
I have to really discipline myself to notice when I'm going down the negative thought trajectory and to bring myself back and say, okay, wait a minute. If I just said, so this is what I make my clients do, Mary. So like we can fantasize what might be one negative thought that one of the people listening to the podcast might have. Well, they might say, I'm not good enough to do this.
Yep.
It's a typical one.
Yeah.
Okay. So then if my client says that, then I say to them, okay, so now I need 3 positives. So what might you say? You might say, I am good enough, but that's kind of a direct correlation. It still sticks down in there. So you want to say something like, I'm really committed to this business. I know what I'm doing. I have good resources that I've been counting on and I'll continue to count on.
Yes.
Okay, that's 2. What's number 3? I really love doing this work. All 3 of those thoughts move you forward. Then you get going. You take unprecedented action.
Yes.
And it feeds the more designed, positive, generative mindset.
And I think that that's it, is that, I mean, I've learned this season in particular, we have been interviewing such a beautiful breadth of experts and thought leaders out there in the world. And it always brings me back to an episode that I did at the beginning of this year with the brain guy in Sydney, Australia, Scott Robinson, where he really talks about the neuroscience behind this, that your brain is looking for data points that prove that you're right. And you don't like to be wrong. Your brain doesn't. So, if you say an identity anchor that I'm not good enough, your brain will automatically go and look for the data points that say, well, see, I told you, not good enough. I couldn't possibly pitch that client. I couldn't possibly charge that amount, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think it's so interesting. There's so much in our brain that is so unconscious, that is working as like autopilot, that we just aren't even aware of. Yeah. That when you gave that example earlier, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, cavemen hunting out in the wild and are attacked by a Bengal tiger. Of course, their vision is zoomed in just to focus on the attack and the threat directly in front of them. And how many times have we in modern day, not hunting tigers, but getting really stressed out about something that's happened to us? We get so zoomed in to the little minute details for survival, right?
Absolutely.
And we miss the big picture.
No, exactly. And we get these pathways through our brain. It's like, you can see where the deer have walked through the hillside because they create pathways, and the pathways get deeper and deeper. Yes. And sometimes then something happens and they have to create new pathways. It's harder to create new pathways. There's brush and bramble in the way. Yeah. But when we and this is where coherent intention comes in, because when we're feeling not good enough, it's really hard to cohere our intention, to say, this is my commitment.
Yes. Yeah.
This is my core commitment. I am absolutely committed to creating a photography business that honors the beauty in every person, where I am absolutely, my intention is to create a coaching business that brings forward the potential of everyone's life, or a podcast business that helps people really, truly simplify so that they can settle into and get done what matters most to them.
Yeah. Well, and, happy clients, happy life. Like, if you're working with people that are getting results, they're going to be, it's so much better coming to the table and so much more willing to take risks as well on their side to, challenge themselves and create better things in their worlds as well. It just seems so obvious sometimes when we say it like this, but we all forget, and we chase the bright, shiny objects. Our intentions are all over the place because we think we have to do everything like other people or whatever, right? And this is where I really want to kind of step into that third pillar you speak of, the resonant action. So when we're mapping out our work week, how do we ensure that our daily actions are actually connected to our core mission and like specifically helping us like achieve the vision that we have for ourselves, especially when curveballs are thrown in the mix? Like, what advice would you give there?
That's a great question.
Because hello, pandemic.
Yeah, hello. 6,000 iterations of the pandemic. Number one is write down your core commitment.
Yes.
And trust it and bring it into your heart, because the courage of your heart is very different than the courage of your more performing for the world self.
Yes.
The courage of your heart, and returning to that again and again. Number 2, go back to my basic trick, which is every night before you go to sleep, you repeat your repeat your core commitment. Yeah. Every morning when you wake up, you repeat your core commitment. I have a client who was with a foundation, a community foundation, and she kept getting distracted. And every morning she began to stand in her commitment. She laid there and said it, and then she stood up and she literally stood in her core commitment. And she just let it expand into her body. And then she went into her day. And what happens then is the actions you're taking are resonant. So what's resonance? You remember how a nice piece of crystal, you ding it, and it goes ding, 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 ding. Mm-hmm. And it has a resonance. That's because the waves coming off of it match each other. They're working together.
Yeah.
And when we are resonant as a leader, then our team can be resonant with us, and they start matching, coming back in. And there's this matching that goes on. And then all of a sudden, an opportunity comes from nowhere. Because this resonance, it's that same room you were talking about walking into.
Yes.
When you walk into a disharmonious room or a room that's full of dissonance, you can feel it. Your body contracts. You want to pull away, or you want to charge in and do something about it, right? Yeah. But when we can find that resonance inside, we begin to relax. And when we link a positive commitment to any change that we want to make, changes that we never thought possible become real.
Yes.
We can mobilize them. We can take action. And our actions, because they're lined up with our core commitment, they have a different ripple effect. They have they're compelling, they're inspiring, they're connecting. Mm-hmm. We connect with others. And our own awareness of, am I on track or off track, grows because I'm trusting and reinforcing that core commitment in my actions. And I'm reflecting at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'm saying, how did my actions fulfill on my core commitment? Did I get off track? Oh, cool. Look at that. I got off track. Again, don't judge. Oh, look at that. I got off track. I wonder why. Oh, I have an undeclared commitment to looking good.
Yeah.
That got in my way. I have an undeclared commitment to being popular. Oh, that got in my way. Okay, what's my real core commitment? To serve.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And, I imagine this takes a level of vulnerability too, to do the assessment, because I think a lot of us, especially if you are one to cram every single iota of a moment of your work week with something to do so you could be super productive. At the end of the day, you're just flat out exhausted, and you've just tucked the kids in, and you're just like, I don't want to think about this. I just want to numb, or I just want to break down and dive into a bowl of snacks or whatever it is. But I think when you do create that commitment to yourself, I don't think these things need to be grandiose. I think
not at all.
Your practice and, trusting in the here and now, saying it with your outside voice, that's a 2 or 3 minute practice at night. It's not this big complex thing, right?
Yeah. It's say it and feel it.
Yeah.
So feel it in your body. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes we'll think it, but our bodies are kind of like there's a lie between our brain and our bodies. Yeah. So when we say that and the core commitment should be simple. Don't make it grandiose. I am not here to serve the entire world.
Yeah.
Right? That would be unrealistic, and my body would know it was a lie.
Right.
I am here to serve the potential of every leader, right? As they serve the world.
Right.
That's a clear commitment, and I can wake up every morning and say, how am I doing it? I want to stand in this. Oh, look, a new person's just come. Oh, look, a new opportunity to serve this organization has just come. Not like magic, but like, I don't know, resonance.
Yes.
The waves come back in.
Yeah, I translate that as like flow state. I mean, when you are working with a cohesive team that is everyone is resonating on the same wavelength as you, I mean, it's amazing what you can get accomplished. It's amazing. Yeah. Like you say, the opportunities seem to quote unquote magically appear because there is resonance that's seen and also felt. And that's where, I think breakthrough momentum, as you say, really happens. And that's when you start to create that positive change and result. Like, are there other secrets to creating breakthrough momentum in your business?
Another one is to remember you're connected. You're not alone. Yeah. So there's a great quote, if I may, from Suzanne Simard in her wonderful book, The Mother Tree, Finding the Mother Tree. She says, trees act not as individuals, but somehow as a collective. Exactly how they do this, we don't yet know. But what we see is the power of unity, What happens to one happens to us all. We can starve together or feast together. And as entrepreneurs, it's hard to remember sometimes the interconnections and to make sure and consciously build those connections that serve us when all the connections we have are our kids, all the other parents in the school and the teachers and the cupcakes we're making and the bagels we're bringing to soccer practice and, all of the rest of that. But it doesn't take a lot of connections, but to remember that we are connected with other people who are doing wonderful things and to listen to podcasts like this and to find your way to things that sustain you. I mean, Glennon Doyle said the only thing that was ever wrong with me was my belief that there was something wrong with me.
So true, right?
And when I believe something's wrong with me, then I isolate.
Yes.
And when I get off that old story, and then I begin to reach out and I recognize you're human, I'm human, here we all are, and I can use my superpower of being curious about you, being curious about the world, being curious about myself.
Yeah.
How intriguing.
Yeah.
How intriguing we are.
Yeah. And we evolve. I mean, I'm going into year 18 of my business. I certainly didn't have the wisdom, the know-how that I have now in, year 4. Certainly not, bumbling my way through and figuring it out as I would go along, making loads of mistakes. I make mistakes now, let me be very clear, but I think I recover a little bit faster. And when I notice that I'm isolating, that is a real red flag because I think we isolate because of shame or embarrassment. Or thinking, gosh, they seem to all have it figured out. Why have I not figured it out? I need to go off into my cave and figure it out,
and become enough.
Right, exactly.
Or hide.
Ugh,
yeah.
The worst.
Yeah, ridiculous. Yeah. Absolutely ridiculous. Yeah.
So then I guess, how do we inspire that collective wisdom, inside the organization to really leverage new opportunities? So if we as a team, employees, contractors, otherwise, are starting to get on the same wavelength, finding resonance. Like, how do we inspire that wisdom collectively?
Well, you ask a lot of good, well-designed questions. And you design the process for involvement. And the first questions you always ask are, what's working around here? What are we proud of? And maybe you gather, and we gather, all kinds of size organizations in a room, and we say, would you go into pairs or would you go into small groups, and would you describe a moment or a time or something in the business that's really working? And would you describe the details of it? And you spend your time taking that apart as much as you would take apart what's not working. Right? Again, remember Barbara Fredrickson, 3-to-1 ratio.
Right.
So you try and spend 3 times as much time talking about what's working and how you can build from that, rather than looking only at what's missing or what's not working and how the heck we're ever going to fill that hole.
Right.
When you focus on what's working, you feel so much more capable of filling the hole. All of a sudden, capacities, your vision broadens. All of a sudden, you're capable. You know exactly what's going on. And the other thing I'd say is, as a team, choose the kinds of mindsets that you want to share and reinforce them in each other. So you asked me about a book that I'm reading, Cassandra Speaks by Elizabeth Lesser, goes and takes apart the myths that we have been raised under that have created mindsets of worth or non-worth. And it's a very provocative book.
Yes. Well, by the way, if you're listening to this, all the resources that Karen mentions will be in our show notes over at thesimplifierspodcast.com. So you can find all the things that we talk about here on this episode there. But yes, I think that, again, it kind of comes back to, it's such a Captain Obvious thing. But we all forget because we're glorious goldfish who have a 8-second, attention span. But when our team and I are in resonance, when we are in flow state, opportunity becomes much more clear. We go, hey, have we ever thought about this and this together? Or have we ever thought about doing a collaboration with these guys? Or have we ever thought about this? And that's where dreams start to kind of come to light and you go, oh. And, one of the things that I made a glorious mistake on very early on in my business, and I am totally fine with sharing for others to learn from, is that for the first 4 years of my business, I thought, oh my God, I'm so busy. I just need to clone myself, get 5 more people who think exactly like me so that we could possibly get all the work done. And what I've learned in year 18 is that's the absolute wrong strategy. You have to surround yourself with people who think nothing like you, who have strengths that are your greatest weaknesses, so that you have a well-rounded team that can resonate. So we're not talking about groupthink here. We're talking about a whole organization that tackles a challenge from very different aspects and different experience levels as well, right?
Exactly. So one of your core values becomes valuing difference.
Yes.
And stopping to listen and be curious before jumping on top of somebody or something. Yeah. But also asking really good questions. So there's a lot that we can design in our lives that will prevent us from having to be a victim or a persecutor or, trying to do something that sets up a dissonance.
Yes.
And one of the key things we can do is think in terms of preventions rather than interventions.
Yes.
Often we're just in the response mode, but instead if we stay in thinking ahead of time. So you asked what's one thing you could do with your week, and I didn't specifically answer that. The one thing you could do with absolutely every week is you find one period of time where you stop, you put in front of you your core commitment, you look at the activities that are scheduled, and just the fastest way to do it, I know, is you give them a rating of 1 to 5. How aligned are these with our core commitment as a team, as an individual, as a company?
Yes.
And you just say, these 4 key activities that are taking most of my time this week, they are all 5s. They're completely aligned with my core commitment. Or you might find that you say, you know what? In retrospect, I think this agreement that we made to fulfill on this for a client or to work with this particular vendor is now a 2. Yeah. It's really out of alignment with our core commitment now that we've gotten more data. How do we want to change it so that we can get it up, or do we need to renegotiate our contract and do something different? Having that pause every week, and I'm going to say every month, to stop and take a look at where are we headed, what are our goals, and are we getting into trying to do too much? Where's the resonance factor here? Are we in a place that the only way I know to say it is there's this internal body sensing that we all have that tells us when we're on beam and off beam. And we can learn to cultivate that. But we won't cultivate it unless we pause. So I have a blog on the power of the pause to answer that.
Yeah.
Oh, is this on beam? It's amazing how fast the body can tell us, even when the brain is going in a different direction.
And let's face it, if you are working for a terrible boss right now, or shock horror, you are that terrible boss, my friend.
Occasionally.
Occasionally. No shame. The reality of the current work industry out there in the world, because of the pandemic, is people are now like, well, I don't have to work here anymore. Remote work opens the world of opportunities. You could have a job in London and be based in New York, and it doesn't matter anymore. So you know as well as I do, if you have spent years, time, money, energy into cultivating the right team around you, but then don't take the time to do this inner work for yourself as a leader, you may lose people. Truly. And
absolutely,
that is a bigger risk than I dare say anything in business is when you have taken the time to really craft an incredible team and then you let yourself go and eventually you will lose that talent on your team, and that takes time to rebuild.
Absolutely. And it's why I start with the first principle of authentic presence.
Yes.
Because if we're not tending to ourselves, if we haven't set up reciprocal cycles for ourselves, we can tend to give and give and give. It's like we're taking ladles from the well, and we just keep giving and giving and giving, and then there's moss at the bottom, and then we take and squeeze out the moss for the people next to us or the people over there, oh, look, they need the moss.
Man.
And then we're over here going, oh my God, I'm parched.
Yes.
Literally parched. We have nothing then to give. And particularly as women, the way we give is when the fountain inside is full.
Yes. Yes.
And there is I have been as busy as you all have. I have let some things go that in retrospect were quite embarrassing, I mean, finding a dirty diaper in the laundry room that I didn't know was still there back in the days when we had cloth diapers, all kinds of crazy things when I was that busy. And I didn't know how critical it was to spend 2 minutes to set up a little altar on my desk, to set up a corner in my bedroom with a candle.
Yes.
I might have 1 minute, but when I light that candle, I walk into myself. I return home to myself in a different way.
So beautiful. And Karen, you run an organization called Communicore, and you guys specialize specifically in organizational consulting, leadership coaching, facilitating retreats and training, and all sorts all around the world. So if you guys are curious about the work that Karen does out in the world, I highly recommend checking out her website and really plugging in. Again, all the links are in our show notes over at thesimplifierspodcast.com, or you can go direct to her website at communicoreconsulting.com and find her there.
And may I invite them specifically, if any women would like to join us in the Courage of the Heart program, February 7th through 11th. We'd love to have you. It's an online program now. We used to have once-a-year retreats in Hawaii, but we've gone online, and they're fabulous. And so I'd love to tell you more.
Fabulous. So all the links are in the show notes, so you guys can check that out as well. And of course, she has executive coaching spots as well. If you're looking to really up-level how you run your business, then I would highly recommend checking her out, having a brief conversation with her and see if it's a right fit for you. So, Karen, I have a few questions as we wrap up that I like to ask every single guest. And again, thank you so much for your time. So that book that you mentioned earlier, my question is, what's one book that is inspiring you or challenging you to think things in a different way?
Well, I mentioned Cassandra Speaks earlier, but I'm going to cheat now.
Okay,
I'm going to get another one in,
Yes.
which is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. It's a book that she is a human woman, biologist, Native American, who writes about our Mother Earth and her relationship with the earth in a way that is just extraordinary. I recommend it highly.
Love it. Well, we will sneak that into the show notes, thesimplifierspodcast.com. So tell us, who's one person, somebody you know personally in your network that you just feel is up to brilliant things? We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
I think you should. Who came to mind is a gorgeous woman named Mira Ko, Merakoh. Mira Ko is a photographer. And I first started working with her about 15 years ago when she was just getting her photography business going, her wedding photography business going. She's a published author. She has worked, we had a program called SOAR that she hosted. She's a Sony photographer, and we had a program called SOAR for women photographers. And I was their coach for a number of years, and we developed programs and things. And she now lives in Texas, which I know you do, Mary. And has a beautiful new program called Fioria, where she is photographing families in their moments of reclaiming their lives, of reclaiming themselves. And her message is always so positive and uplifting. And so that's who I would want to give a shout out to.
Love it.
She's great.
Well, we will link her up in the show notes, so if people are curious about her work, that you can see it there as well. I believe that gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity to get to know you.
Yes.
I'm grateful it's raining in California. And every night, my husband and I have a gratitude practice. And we tell one of us says to the other, what are you grateful for?
Yeah.
And so tonight I'll say, I'm grateful for this opportunity to get to know some new people.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for you as well. And of course, for Peter out there in the world for connecting us too, because I feel like these are the things that unfortunately we always set aside, or we put at the very end of our to-do list, and we think, yeah, this is a good idea, but ... And this is the secret. This is at the heart of the work that we do. The soul yearns for it, I think. And when we start to just give a little bit more attention here, I can almost guarantee things will change, and for the positive. So again, all the links are in our show notes, including social media links to connect with Karen directly, either on LinkedIn, Facebook, or otherwise. So Karen, my final question for you today is this. Someone somewhere is listening to you and I right now, and she's right there. She says, yeah, this all sounds good, but ... What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
I'd say, I trust you. Yeah. Even though I don't know you, I trust you, and trust yourself. I think that's the greatest gift we can give ourselves and each other.
Yeah. And we trust in the here and the now.
Yep.
And that is enough.
Yep. That is enough. It's not contingent on anything.
Yeah.
It's a declaration to the universe.
Yes.
I'm here, and I choose to trust myself. Yeah.
Karen, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Mary. This has been awesome.